Hey everybody, my name is Robert with RC Archery. Today's video, I'm going to be helping you find 3 ways to naturally want to hold in the middle of the target. This is going to give you the easiest way to be able to center yourself left and right and up and down. Along with this, I also want to be able to give back to my community here with YouTube. I want to give you a 5% discount code for all the Hamskea Archery products on my website. So if you haven't visited my website yet, I'll put a link down in the description below. It's rcrchery.com. The 5% discount code is going to be YouTube5, all lowercase. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is our stance. Now, much like what John Dudley has been talking about in his School of Knock and what he is explaining to you, I have the same starting point as what I like to set up as well. And here's a photo to let you see a visual. You'll see that on the left side, my front foot, the end of my big toe is at the base of the big toe on my back foot there on the right. What that does is allow us to have a neutrally open position to start with, and it helps our body naturally want to use the muscles here in our shoulder to be able to stabilize, and it's also going to help us get our arm out of the string path of the bow. So you can see here, I'll line up to the camera. If I am just completely even right now and I hold my hand up to the camera like this, you can see that there's no space in between my hand and my chest, and that means that my arm right now is in the string path. But if I set my feet up the way that I've talked about in the picture and what I'm going to show you today and put my hand up in front of us here, you can see that there is a little bit of distance where you can see my chest here in the video. And what that does, again, allows us to be able to help stabilize that front shoulder, keep our arm out of the string path. If you haven't seen the video that I've done talking about this before, it's actually one of my most popular videos here on my YouTube channel. I'll link that here above. That way you can go and watch it today as well. Now, to take this a step further, I like to do what I consider eliminating drift, or as much drift as possible. And you've probably heard in the past people talking about close your eyes, draw the bow back on target, see where you are, and adjust your feet to that. I actually don't like that very much. I've found there's a lot of variances in that, and you can really mess yourself up depending on your form, your pull, and what you're doing. What I found that works better instead is to do this based off of a drift setup, and it's basically getting on target, figuring out how you drift, and then adjusting from there. Now, the basis behind what I do is not moving one foot versus the other. If you think about it, if you start sliding one foot back or forward and it gets to be more than the other foot, you're actually creating an imbalance in the body because the distance from our hip bone to the floor is going to be shorter on one leg versus the other. So you're going to end up having, depending on how severe it is, you can end up having some back issues, but you can also, just more than that, you're going to have some hold issues on target. So what I do is I keep the feet together and I rock off my heels and I open and close myself to the target. On this week's Patreon video for Tier 1, I'm going to give you a full rundown of how my drill works, what I do with the archers that I coach, what I do with myself, and it's going to actually be a segment that I'm going to pull from the coaching reference video that I give when you buy that package or just want to purchase that video. That way you can get a full idea of exactly how I eliminate that drift. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is on a vertical platform, what we can do with our bow arm when we draw the bow back, and also how we're anchoring with the arm as well to help you not have to fight the bow as much, and it's also going to help you be able to set up for stage 2 of being able to hold vertically on target. So look at your arm, and I've talked about this in the past, but we need to look at our arm as basically like a seesaw, and we're going to be looking at our entire body with this. Our front shoulder here is the midpoint of that seesaw, the fulcrum of it. And if you have your bow hand out and it is level with the shoulder height or slightly above, it's going to roll all the weight down into the shoulder and into our body, into our core. And that's what we're aiming to do with this. That's what we want to do with this, because it's going to take the weight of the bow and it's going to shift it back to a central area of our body, and it's going to essentially make the bow feel lighter, and it's going to help you keep from bobbing up and down on target as much. Now, when we draw the bow back, we're actually going to want to draw with our hands starting just above our shoulder. So we have it up here, and it's not real high like we're sky drawing. It's just a little bit above the shoulder, somewhere in between the ear and the shoulder height. And then we draw the bow back. Now when we do that, because of this angle being coming down into our body, we're actually going to drive the arm with the shoulder and the elbow joints and compress them, and it all puts it together and seats them in place. Now the benefit of this is without the separation in our joints, you're not going to have, one, you're not going to get as much joint damage, and two, you're not going to feel the weight as much of the bow. It's going to keep you steadier on target. I'm going to grab my bow here and I'll just give you an idea of what this looks like. The main thing too that I want to mention with this is when you do this, you want to make sure that with the bow in your hand, you're actually going to draw it back and lift it up the exact same way you would if you had the bow not in your hand. So if you can hold your arm off to the side and lift it straight up, this is what we're looking for. You don't want to have the elbow bent and then draw and push back out. That's not going to set these joints for you. You want to be able to just hold the bow here. What I like to do is go ahead and clip my release on, and then I will just relax with my bow hand all together and almost let go of the bow, and I'll support it with my release arm here. And then when I do this, I'm just going to take it, swing it straight up, and then draw it back. You can see that my bow hand is just slightly above the shoulder joint here, and that's going to help it seat. And then I'll come up into my anchor, and then at this point, if the target is higher, say you're shooting uphill, you're going to lean back at the waist and bring everything up. If the target is lower, you're going to bend forward at the waist and lower everything down. What that does for you versus having to lower your bow arm is it keeps that plane of balance the exact same. Now the other side of that, the flip side of that, is it keeps your draw length the way that the bow is set up versus your body's draw length. It keeps that the same too. If we're lowering our bow arm instead of bending at the waist for a lower target, you're elongating the body's draw length because you're elongating the distance from the bow hand to your face. That's going to make you have to cram the shoulder up or bend at the elbow, and that creates some problems. Now, if you're shooting at a higher target, you lift your arm up instead of leaning back, then you actually create the body, the draw length of our body, our natural body there. It's going to decrease it. So it's going to make the bow feel really long. It's going to make you have to stretch out. You're going to lose a lot of the support. You're going to lose a lot of the stability that way. It's going to make your shots harder to fire either direction. That's what we want to make sure that we're bending at the waist and keep our arm in that same T formation there. All right, so the second part of holding vertically on target naturally in the middle is going to be the height that we put our loop at. Now this is the big one here, and it really helps you control the leverage over the bow, and it's going to help you also control how your grip is going to fit in your hand. So it's going to be a pointing device. It's going to help you point lower or higher on target. Now, if you look at the bow, the way that it's set up here is a mechanical device. If we have our pulling point here and you were to lift it up the string and just severely hit, have it up here, you'll pull over the top of the bow a lot more. So when we raise our loop up, it increases the leverage over the top of the bow. And when do we want to use this? Well, we're going to use this in our aiming drills if we're naturally seeing ourselves wanting to lose the leverage over the bow system and it's dropping down, and you're naturally wanting to kind of fade as you're going through your aiming. This isn't necessarily for someone that is holding under the target and they're rock solid under the target. That's going to be a little bit different issue. This is for somebody that just cannot maintain the leverage and the bow feels extremely heavy no matter what they do with stabilizers or their setup or anything. Draw length is spot on, loop length is spot on, all of that of course. But it just wants to drop down. You'll want to raise that loop up and give you more leverage over the bow. Now on the flip side, and something to look out for that, is if you're raising the loop too high on the bow and you maintain too much leverage over the bow system itself, you'll actually start pulling yourself out of the top of the target and it'll relax the muscles holding the bow arm and holding the bow up. And when you do that, you'll notice that the bow will probably want to drop down continually. You may think that you need to keep raising the loop when in reality you need to lower it. So just keep that in mind and look out for it. A good starting point is to have the center of the arrow actually run through the center of the burger button hole. So I'll try to align this so you can see it as best as I can on camera. But we've got here this hole, that's our burger button hole. And if you run the center of the arrow through the very middle of that, that's generally where these bow systems are designed from the factories to be set up. You can vary from that. I've ran the bottom of my arrow at the very top of the burger button hole. I've ran the bottom of my arrow at the very bottom of it, just depending on the bow, what I'm looking for balance. Now, if you are one of those archers that is ripping the bow off the top of the target, front weighting stabilizer system isn't working or just isn't set up right for you and you don't like that, then you can lower the loop down and you can decrease the leverage that you have over that system. And you can see that even here, if I start to pull from the bottom of the bow, it's going to pull the bottom of the bow back towards me. So it's a way to help control that. Now, there's a simpler way of cutting a loop off and tying it higher and tying it lower and adjusting your nocking point and adjusting your rest height and all that stuff every single time you want to do this. It's going to be through aiming drills, and there's a special way that I can show you how to leave your loop on here, measure it once you're done, and then cut everything and retie everything and set everything back to 0 and make the loop the right height over what leverage you have. That's actually something that I'm going to go over in my Patreon video today. That'll be in tier 1, so that tier 1 video will have both the stance with the natural point of aim and going over the drift, and it's going to have the loop height part in it too. But I'll put both of those in there and give you full step-by-step process to just make this a little bit easier for you and help you out in the long run. So real quickly, one thing you heard me mention in this video today was aiming drills. Aiming drills is something that I've recently brought back into my system, and it's the way that I start out every single practice session. And if I have time, it's the way that I'm starting out when I go to a tournament as well. And what it's doing for me is helping me refocus how I'm looking at the target and how I'm going to attack the situation with my bow. And really it's allowing me to focus on aiming on target, trusting my float, trusting my shot, and then when I go to execute, I'm much calmer and I allow everything to happen as it's going to. I let my subconscious take over and it aligns everything so much better for me. That's also something that you can do when it comes to setting up how your bow is set up, how your stabilizers and everything when you're checking everything, and eliminate the first part of just the shot execution too. Appreciate everybody watching this video today. Remember your $5 off coupon code. It's YouTube5 for all the Hamskea products on my website. I have their new rest sites, peep sites rather, and everything else. If you don't see something on there that you're interested in and want, send me an email, let me know. Use the contact form on my website, and I'd be glad to get either an invoice sent to you or just add it onto my website. Hope everybody has a great day, and I look forward to seeing you soon.